If you really sift through the wreckage of financial history, you find this one single repeating pattern. It's kind of funny, actually. We tell ourselves we're getting smarter, right? That all our new technology is going to protect us from the mistakes of the past. But it doesn't. Not at all. All technology really does is give us more complex, more sophisticated ways to make the exact same disastrous errors. Every single generation thinks they finally changed the game, right before the game ends and they lose everything. And it's all built on these four simple words. Honestly, this is probably the most expensive lie in the history of finance. It's the myth, the core belief that fuels every single speculative fire just before it burns everyone to the ground. It's that dangerous little voice we listen to when greed starts to feel a lot more important than reason. Because underneath all the shiny new tech, whether it's a rare flower or a new continent, the internet, or some digital token, the script, the actual story, is always identical. See, every bubble is powered by a really compelling narrative, a story about guaranteed wealth that people are just desperate to believe is true. The packaging changes, but the product inside, that's always just plain old human greed and fear. So how is this lie sold again and again? Well, it's not random, it's not an accident, it's a formula. It's a predictable three-part script that has kicked off every single financial mania in history. And trust me, once you learn to recognize it, you will start seeing it absolutely everywhere. Okay, so these three ingredients have to happen in this exact order. First up, you've got the spark, a real innovation that feels totally revolutionary. Now, this part is critical. It gives greed a respectable excuse. It frames pure gambling as some kind of visionary investing. Then you need the fuel, a massive flood of cheap money from low interest rates and easy credit. And when that fuel hits the spark, boom, you get the fire. And that's when mass psychology takes over. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, becomes the only logic anyone cares about. And look, this isn't some modern invention. This exact pattern just echoes through the centuries. The assets change, the tech changes, but the rhythm of the mania, that steady drumbeat of an impending collapse, it's always the same. This timeline here, it shows you the whole relentless cycle. From tulip bulbs back in the 1600s to digital tokens just a couple years ago, the story just repeats itself. Every single one of these moments was sold to the public with that same old promise. This time, it's different. And every single time, history came back with the same brutal answer. No, it isn't. I mean, this is the classic example of just pure irrationality. We are not talking about a house or a rare piece of art. We are talking about a flower bulb. People were trading their homes, their land, their entire life savings for something that you could, literally grow in your backyard. It's just a brilliant illustration of how an everyday thing can be turned into a crazy speculative asset if the story is good enough. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, only idiots fall for this, think again. This quote is from Sir Isaac Newton. Yeah, that Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientific minds in all of human history. He was an early investor in something called the South Sea Company, sold his shares for a nice profit, but then he saw his friends getting rich, got swept up in the mania, bought back in right at the very top, and lost his entire fortune. His story proves a really crucial point. Absolutely no one is immune. The language changes, but the psychology behind it, it's identical. In the late 90s, companies with zero profits were valued in the billions just because they had eyeballs. Fast forward 20 years, and digital tokens with no actual use were being held by people with diamond hands, fueled by the simple, beautiful belief that number go up. It's the exact same logic. Justify today's insane price with some fantasy about tomorrow, and, well, that brings us to the latest version of the script, NFTs. The spark was blockchain tech, which, for the first time, allowed for digital scarcity to be sort of manufactured. This kicked off a speculative frenzy where a JPEG of a rock could sell for over $1 million. It was the South Sea bubble just written in code, a perfect storm of new technology and absolutely timeless human behavior. But this is where the story pivots from just human foolishness to something more like systemic design. Because you have to understand, these bubbles are not accidents. They are a feature of our financial system, not a bug. They run on a hidden rule, a rule designed to make sure that the house always wins. This is the core concept right here. When the bubble is inflating, the profits are private. Wall Street traders, VCs, insiders, they make absolute fortunes. But when that bubble inevitably pops, the losses are socialized. The public, you, pays the price. The most obvious example, of course, was the 2008 crisis. The banks that created the entire mess got bailed out with taxpayer money, while millions of regular homeowners lost everything. Let's be perfectly clear. For the powerful, a market crash isn't really a risk. It's just a part of the business cycle. They take these enormous risks, knowing that when the system finally breaks, it'll be repaired with public money. The only lesson the financial elite ever seem to learn from a crisis is that there is no risk so big that it won't eventually be rewarded with a bailout. So, what does all this history mean for us, right here, right now? Well, this cycle of boom, bust, and bailout didn't just keep going. It has created what is arguably the largest, most widespread bubble in all of history. $9 trillion. That is not a company's valuation. That is the amount of new money the U.S. Federal Reserve basically created out of thin air after the 2008 crisis. It was the largest injection of financial fuel in human history, poured directly onto the dying embers of one bubble just to get the next one started. So where did all that money go? That $9 trillion. It didn't go into your wages or into building new infrastructure. Nope. It went straight into financial assets. It sparked what people now call the everything bubble, pushing up the value of stocks, housing, private equity, art, basically anything that wealthy could own. And this created this very fragile illusion of wealth, built not on real growth, but on debt and this fantasy of permanent 0% interest rates. This chart shows the massive disconnect. It tells the whole story. While household net worth soared into the stratosphere, driven by these inflated assets, real wages for most people barely moved. This is what the illusion of wealth looks like. Everyone felt richer on paper, but the foundation was completely unstable, built on debt and cheap money, not actual economic production. So what's today's spark? It's artificial intelligence. And look, without a doubt, AI is a genuinely revolutionary technology that is going to change the world. But it is also being used as the justification for sky-high valuations and a speculative mania, echoing every single bubble that came before it. It's a real innovation wrapped in a trillion-dollar fantasy. So how do you protect yourself? Well, here's a simple checklist, your own little bubble detection kit. First, when prices for something start rising faster than anyone can logically explain. Second, when the experts start using phrases like new paradigm and tell you you're just old-fashioned if you don't get it. And third, and this is the biggest red flag of them all, when your friends, your neighbors, your barber, they all start getting rich doing what seems like nothing. That's your signal. You're not investing anymore. You're gambling. But you know, the biggest lie of all isn't even this time it's different. The biggest, most dangerous illusion is the belief that someone is going to warn you before the collapse. The experts, the media, the government, they have never, not once in all of history, sounded the alarm in time. In the end, the only person who can protect you is you, by learning to recognize the script before the final act begins.